Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Franchising 360 Show, where we take a full 360-degree look at franchising. I am Tim Parmeter, and with me, as always, is Danielle Wright.
Hi.
Danielle, how are we today?
Doing great, boss. How are you?
I am great. You threw me off with the boss thing because we both know that's not even remotely true in any sense. But I'm excited to talk about tonight's topic,
Which is...
Oh, I thought you knew. So
I should just show up. Again, you're the boss. I'm just here.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about this thing in franchising is commonly referred to as validation calls.
Okay. Validation calls. Got it.
Right. Which in franchising is, we just make up our own, like you need a whole glossary of terms and abbreviations. So validation calls, when people are looking at franchises, there's a long process, 6 to 8 weeks sometimes, but where you actually get to speak to owners. To me, I think it's one of the most kind of exciting and really eye-opening parts of this whole journey.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't go and buy a product or a car without reading the reviews and talking to people. I think we have a story you randomly stopped some person while we were driving and said, "Hey, how do you like your car?" So it's the opportunity for people to really get to know franchise owners in a system to see if, one, I want to be a franchise partner with them, right? Kind of validate or research into economics, the brand. Lots of questions come around in what is termed validation, which I like just to say is a nice word for research. So,
yeah, or that you get to talk to owners, the people that are doing this every day in that brand that you were considering. So before we dive deeper into this and certainly give you a chance to talk about it from a franchisor standpoint, you've been on that side for 15 years.
Yes.
And then I can talk a little bit from how our team at FranCoach helps those folks looking at the franchise in that position. But if we go back to when somebody gets first connected to the franchise, I mean, that's a 6 to 8 week process on average.
Most of the time, right? It's like we always say it's like a dating relationship, right? Like you start looking at them, you're going to have coffee and get to know them, and then you're going to do dinner or maybe lunch. So think of it as...
Is that how we did it?
Neither here nor there to this process, but those steps do occur and life comes in the way. So sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 8 weeks.
Right.
I've had people go a lot longer just because life occurs.
Right. And I think that just in franchising in general, there's never, I shouldn't say never, but there's rarely oh my gosh, it's always this, right? And so within that time frame, again, average 6 to 8 weeks, there can be anywhere from maybe 10 to 15 different steps that they're going to take along the way.
Right. And so that's what part of that validation stage is coming at the end. You've done all of this self due diligence, things that really rely you to have the conversation, the franchise to give you information. Now they're opening up the funnel to say, hey, I like you enough that I want to introduce you to my friends.
Right.
If I'm going to introduce you to my friends, you better be sticking around for a while because I'm going to hear back from the friends from the franchisor side. I don't really like this new friend. Do we have to keep them as a friend?
Right.
So a lot of that kind of unpacks itself in that validation research process.
And kind of why it's called, they're referred to as validation calls, because you should be validating what you have heard from the franchisor up to that point. And I think it's always a good reminder. I think there's a myth.
Oh, you and the myth word.
In franchising.
Say it again.
Myth. And so in franchising that, the franchise, they're just trying to sell me, right? If I've got the franchise fee, do I have a pulse? There's that feeling sometimes, but when it's done properly, the franchise is also vetting you as that individual, right? And even in validation calls, like you said, the owners are going to report back as well.
Right. If they don't have a great experience or something comes up from that call, and sometimes the owners don't, reach out to the franchise to say, hey, I really don't like Bob or Sally. It just happens to come about at some point. And if someone really shows up poorly, I've got some instances when we talk about that side, but there are just things that people need to be aware that it is a mutual vetting process. And that's the reason why we have validation, is to make sure I don't end up marrying you and can't get out of it.
Right. It's, and it's done towards middle to end of the process in theory, because
historically,
that you've had a chance to learn some basics along the way. So when you get there, you're asking, in theory, better questions.
Right. Most of the time, right? But I think franchising's been around for quite some time. Go back, watch a previous episode. We tell you how long ago franchising started. But I think that you find over time, people want to take those steps differently. Now, the franchise, like we talk about, gives you a business in a box. They kind of have the same steps of a process and box of discovery for their brand. They don't want you to jump ahead. But there are times when it's kind of necessary to bridge some fears and some gaps with people, that it might be important early on to start having some conversations with some people and just really making sure that they're getting the information that they need at the place that they need it to make a decision.
Yeah, and the 4,000 plus franchises, it's safe to say there are 4,000 or so different exact plans franchisors take.
Correct.
One day you and I will be co-czars of franchising and everybody will have to do the same thing.
Well, maybe you are, but I'm good.
You're good.
I'm good.
You can be the assistant czar.
I will sit back here and just watch the.
But it is, so that part can get confusing sometimes as well with this. But when we come back, let's talk about a little bit more of kind of that process from the franchisor standpoint, and then we'll hit up later from the other side, from the candidate, and how
fantastic
our team at FranCoach
and some
helps.
Great stories along the way.
There's definitely a great story or two along the way. So all of that coming up next here on the Franchising 360 show. Hey, we are back on the Franchising 360 show talking about validation calls. And Danielle, you've been on the franchisor side for 15 or so years.
Yep, we've been franchisees. You forget that a lot of the time.
We have been franchisees, and so we've experienced it. And that's why we kind of call this the Franchising 360 show, right? There's not much of this industry that we've not been a part of the last 10, 15 years, 25 years combined, right? So with validation calls on the franchisor side, so let's say I'm a candidate and I'm interested in your brand, and now we get to the point of the validation calls. Talk to me about kind of what that process looks like.
So typically you've done 3 or 4 steps, learning the basics of the business, understanding how the model works, how many people I need to hire, what's the management, how much money I can make. I know we've had that conversation. I'm tread lightly there. But now's the time to, like you said, validate or fact check the information that the franchisor is giving you. Because at that juncture, the person you've been talking to has been the keeper of all things information-wise. And you've probably, as a client or candidate, have gone out and Googling this, or I'm Redditing that, or I'm reading this review or that review. I've gotten that a lot of times. And that's a great place to go, but don't let that be the decision maker. Put that as a checkbox on your list. Hey, I did this, I did this, I did this. So when we're introducing you to validation, understand from a franchisor perspective, we want to protect our owners. They're running businesses. They're helping to make money. They're making themselves money. Taking 2 or 3 hours out of their day to talk to prospective owners is a lot for them. It takes away from that business. So we want to make sure that people are working through a process and have checked our boxes before I introduce you to those owners.
You have to kind of earn being able to talk to the owners.
It's if I'm gonna reach out to them and ask them graciously, please, do you remember when you were in this seat? You wanted this information. So the franchise gets very particular about validation, not from a perspective of who you can talk to, because that's kind of illegal. There's the list of owners.
But go back to that. So that's because that's a myth, right?
Yes.
My favorite word that I barely can say. But like, oh, you're giving me these 3 people to talk to. Well, it's because these are the only 3 out of the 300 that are successful or happy.
Can be.
Right.
And franchises do that, right? They shouldn't, because the reality is when they give you that franchise disclosure document, what we've talked about, the list of all the owners, past or present, ones that have left the system for whatever reason, are still listed in the document. So you are allowed to call any of them.
Correct.
What we try to tell you is don't go doing that on your own. They may not take your phone call. They're not going to know who you are. They're going to maybe think you're trying to sell them something. The purpose of these research calls, these validation calls, is to use time wisely, keep them 30 minutes, and ask the questions that you're really uncertain about, or you didn't get clarity through the discovery process. Like, how much money can you really make? That's something they can tell you. But I think in your experience and my experience, owners most of the time don't really know how much money they're making.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's sometimes too on the franchisor side, there's the perception or the fear that the franchisor is manipulating that. And oftentimes the really good ones are going to kind of personalize it based on you. Maybe it's geography, personality, background.
What's still missing for you? It's a great question to always ask. So before we go in, what's still missing? What's not connecting? So
Right.
if it's a labor piece, I'm not really sure how many people I need to have and how much I have to pay them.
Right.
So there's a homework that we give them on the validation side because validation isn't just calls.
Right.
Like you said, validation calls, but I want to be clear with our guests and our audience is that it's not. It's the time that you're going to start doing a lot of research. You're going to run pro formas. You're going to be
Right.
talking to lenders about borrowing money. You're going to be talking to owners about that pro forma, filling in the holes and the gaps. You're going to do research on who I'm going to hire.
Right.
Get on job boards. Like if you're looking at a franchise right now and you're saying, hey, I really want to own this fitness, but I don't know what a fitness manager charges or
Right.
costs. Guess what? Go on Indeed, go on ZipRecruiter, type
Right.
it in, see what other fitness places are charging. So validation isn't just making calls to owners. It's really doing a lot of the deep dive interest and research into that
Yeah.
brand.
And not every owner is great about talking about everything, right?
Yes.
Like I'm really trying to, check my numbers on the pro forma. Well, Danielle may be terrible about numbers, but I can get great information from her on, maybe it's the labor or the marketing, or maybe somebody's running it semi-absentee versus full-time.
Right.
So being targeted on that, and again, the more communication you have with the franchisor, hopefully they're doing the right thing and being able to make those connections.
Well, and I think if you're working with a group like FranCoach, I think you guys, tell me if I'm wrong, really kind of help guide them through that as well. So
Yeah.
you always have that sidecar person to kind of remind you what's the purpose of validation. If you're out on your own doing the research on businesses, just know that that's okay to ask, hey, can I talk to this person? Or hey, do you have someone in your system that's mom, 2 kids, balancing soccer, basketball, baseball, all of the things,
Right.
plus running the home, plus running a business? Can I talk to that person?
Right.
So it's okay to ask them for that. They're not going to voluntarily give you that information as a Zor because I can't tell you can only talk to one person.
Right, exactly. And so you mentioned some of the things that our team at FranCoach that we help people with, and some certain questions to ask. We're going to hit up some of those things, what to ask, what not to ask on the Franchising 360 show right after this. Welcome back to the Franchising 360 show. We are talking about validation calls, when they happen, what the heck are they, how to be best prepared for that. So many things with validation calls. And Danielle, we were talking a little bit about some kind of key questions, I think.
Yeah. So I think there are a list of questions that the franchisor thinks that a franchise prospect, candidate, client should ask. But in your world, do you prep them for that? Do you give them, do we ask the same questions, I guess, is the question I have. Like, I know what the franchisor wants people to know. What do you want them to know?
Yeah, and so there are times franchisors will, kind of maybe prep our clients. Hey, here's some sample things to ask,
Okay.
and that's fine. We really have kind of put it into 4 buckets of things we want people to focus on, because we had a client years ago. And like they were getting ready to talk to owners, and like, okay, I've got a spreadsheet of questions, and she had 127.
No way.
Oh yes, 127 questions.
She thinks she was going to get that done in 30 minutes?
Right. That's kind of what I said.
I
Are you
mean-
spending a week with this person? Right. And so, but really, and she sent me the list, but it was,
I have so many questions to that questions.
right.
Yes, go
But
ahead.
it was really all kind of around 4 things. And I think that it's really, it's the day in the life of the owner, support from the franchisor. I like, and you're going to like roll your eyes at this, is the like, hey, would you do it all over again piece? Exactly. And then of course the financial. And so, but I start that way with the day in the life, because nothing is more important than you as the owner. What the heck are you getting yourself out of bed to go do every day?
Right.
Right.
Because this goes back to the get out of the bed test. What am I doing this for? My why. My
Right.
why.
It is the why and the what. And because one franchisor, you may talk to a franchise owner that, oh gosh, this really hasn't gone well, right? And you're like, well, why not? Maybe that was a bad fit for them.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Or there are franchises that we've worked with numerous times in the past where I'm like, and I know it's a great brand and our clients have been super happy as owners. You couldn't pay me millions of dollars to own that franchise because it would be a terrible fit for me.
Yes.
Right.
I can think of one right off the top
I
of my
can
head.
think of a lot of them. And so, and then support is key, but this is one of those things where like people think they're asking a good question. So Danielle, as a franchise owner, have you gotten a lot of support from the franchise?
Oh, this is a trick question. It's a trick question.
It kind of is, but it seems like it's simple because you might go, no, because you didn't need much, or maybe you're
Or
super needy.
you're at a different inflection of your growth stage of your franchise business.
I've been doing this 10 years. You don't need
right,
it.
you don't
right?
really, and they know you don't need it. So
Right.
they maybe reach out and
They're
make sure
not
you have
bugging
like
you. Right.
you got a heartbeat. Yep, you still exist. You're good. You're paying royalties. Fantastic. We're fine.
Right. So, but we still need to understand the support. So
Right.
it's kind of like, to me, we're going to coach our people to say, when you need help, do you have places to go? Or the people to call?
Do you have a phone a friend?
Right. Is it within the franchise? Right. Do they call you right back? Is it a week and a half? Can you talk to owners?
What's their communication channels and how best to get a hold of people?
Yeah. And so the one that you always roll your eyes at is, would you do this all over again? Right. And
but do you know why I roll my eyes at it?
No, tell me. I was about to ask. So
no,
tell me why.
Like,
then
no,
I'm going to tell you why.
I just want to know what your thoughts are, really. Like, why do you think I roll my eyes?
So I ask a question and then you make me answer.
Yes, but that's exactly what we do here at the Franchising 360 show.
And in life.
And there's your eyes rolling. Your turn.
So, and I'll actually give you an example is if I ask that owner, would you do this all over again? Well, let's be honest. Almost every time their answer is going to be yes.
Okay.
They took the time to, like, most of the time it's going to be that. But then they're going to say yes. But, and really they should be saying yes and, as we all know around here, right? So, yes, and.
I don't do the and thing very well.
If I did it all over again, I would do this differently.
But that requires self-reflection.
But almost every time they'll get that answer. Okay. And so what they're doing is, this is where to me, I think it's key because it's validation of the plan, is they're going to go, if I did it all over again, I would do this differently.
Okay.
And in almost every time they're ratting themselves out on some part that they deviated from, right? Okay. So it kind of goes back to like almost borderline be dumb and just follow the plan.
Sort of. And I think is because in validation, the purpose for a franchise wanting you to validate is to validate just that, the plan.
Right.
Because once you start hearing that people deviated from it, then you instantly think that you can too. But then if I challenge you on your four pieces, the first three are very factual and things that can align for every single person. You open up that fourth question, you're opening it up to an emotional answer that
on the financial.
No, on the would you do this again?
Oh.
Like that's very
and it's really
a very touchy-feely space.
It is, and I like to get to the why on that. And to me, I think it's if I were ranking the four, it's the fourth most important thing. But
because they're like, if they would do it again or not do it again doesn't really apply to me if I should do it or not do it, right? Like you're just opening up a can of worms.
but that's to me a key point of the validation calls.
Okay.
You might not have great experience or struggle with one thing. Doesn't mean I'm going to. But let's come back after this.
Hot topic.
With a quick story on that, on validation calls, and why I'm right on that and why she's not, on the Franchising 360 show right after this. And we are back on the Franchising 360 show. During the break, I got punched in the side and had to give up my credit card for some stuff.
Here we go again.
But no, I love the conversation on the validation calls. And the one thing I was going to share before we went to break.
Before I punched you and all of these things.
Yes,
got it. Understood. And
so the reason why we asked that question, or I like people asking that question, would you do it all over again, is we had somebody a couple years ago was talking to an owner of a brand, was literally one of their top 2 or 3 owners, right? Doing almost $10 million a year in revenue from a non-brick and mortar brand, which is not easy to do. And so, but everything that owner was saying was kind of coming across in a very negative tone. And so it was really scaring our client half to death. And kind of at the end, she's like, gosh, this doesn't sound good. Like
I don't know that I want to do this now.
She was a little scared. She's like, are you glad you did this? Would you do this over again? And all of a sudden the owner just perked up. Oh my gosh, it's been the best thing ever. Loved every minute of it. We're about to renew our franchise agreement. She was just like one of those people that maybe is never super duper happy.
I guess the big question, did the person buy it?
They did.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Didn't hurt. On the franchisor side, it'd be like, yep, I just lost a deal. Fantastic.
Right. But one of the other things, with validation calls that I think happens a lot is as that conversation ends, the owner's going to say,
if you have any other questions, feel free to call me. That does happen every single time.
Right. And so
I've not got one person that said, hey, don't ever call me again.
Right.
Except when they haven't had a pleasant validation call.
Right.
Like, hey, I've gotten calls, numerous calls. Hey, so I just talked to so-and-so. Oh yeah, how'd it go? Yeah, it didn't go very well.
Right.
I don't think they'd be the right fit for the brand. And then I'm in an awkward space, and
Right.
the franchise is in an awkward space. And then how do you have those awkward conversations?
Right.
You just do.
But that's, again, it's a reminder, franchises are rewarded. They
Yep.
are vetting you every step of the way.
So that's why validation is important from not just the call perspective, but all aspects of it, because systems grow because they have like-minded people all going after the same goals, the same visions, and that's what they look for when they look for franchisees in their system.
And we've had a couple episodes where we've talked a little bit about the FDD, and
Yes.
there's some language in there that can sound harsh
Yep.
and it's really brand protection. But you just hit on it, right? The owners are the, like, to
What,
me,
me? Oh, thanks.
the owners are like the pickiest people in this process.
Yes.
Because if you don't show up right, you are now attacking them and their brand,
Right.
which is kind of goes
Because I
back
think
to
you
what
talk
that
about it. You
language
wear
is.
it on the shirt, you wear it on your hat.
Right.
There have been people actually that tattoo their brand on their skin. I know, weird. But like they believe in it and they've invested time, money. A lot of people like take their kids' college funds and put this into it. So if you're not in the equal space of, hey, this is the thing I'm committing my time to, people are very protective. It's like their child. And
Yeah.
again, it's like the dating thing, right? The way we look at franchises is dating. Once we're in the franchise, it's a marriage, and now we're having kids, and we just
Right.
got to make sure that we protect that family.
Right. Because we've all probably had friends, or maybe perhaps been us, where, like, everybody in our circle is like, why are you dating that person?
Yes.
But then the franchisors really do pay attention to their
They
owners
do.
when they say that this isn't our person, and here's
And
why.
a lot of owners show up differently during this discovery phase. And then once they become owners, wow, you're Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It does happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And then that just means there's a breakdown in the partnership.
Yeah. And just so people do know, because we've talked a lot about what it is, on our end, we usually kind of suggest if you can talk to 3 or 4 owners,
Okay.
you usually get enough cross-section of information. And then if anything is, maybe like you said, if anything is still missing, hey, I haven't gotten enough on this topic. And our team will help with this too, but you can always just go back to the franchisor. This is the piece that's missing. Who you got?
And that's always, I've found over the years, that's the best question to ask. Like, don't ask the questions like, how you feeling? Oh, let's not. What's missing? Like, if you're pausing for a second, you're not really sure, and you're never going to be a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Let's just set that straight. But you really want to be a solid 8 out of 10. So go and ask more fact-finding questions, not emotionally based ones.
Yeah.
And then also don't be the person that wants to call everybody, because here's what's going to happen. Still independently owned, operated businesses. Everybody's going to have a nuance. So finding apples to apples across a boatload of owners is not going to happen.
If you're looking for a reason to not do it, let me help you.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it. Right. And so, and the cold calling, and really quickly, of like out of the FDD, you can do it legally. It's why they're there. But you also are now calling somebody who doesn't know who you are, why you're calling. If you're like trying to run a shop down the street, right? So don't do that. And then just so people know, when we're done with the validation calls, it's usually when we're getting ready for Meet the Team Day, which that's definitely coming up as one of our next episodes.
Okay,
so
perfect.
So Danielle, I love talking about the validation calls, and I think it's such a huge part of the process.
At some point, I'm going to get you to say validation minus the calls.
Validation.
That's all it is.
I did it.
It's validation.
Good job, me. So on the note of me getting something correct, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up tonight. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to the Franchising 360 show. We'll see you here on Biz TV next Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. For Danielle, I'm Tim. See you next week.